Warriors, rise. All right, Warriors. I've been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. And it aligned in the perfect time. As a lot of people right now are running for the hills, we have a bloodbath in crypto. We have one of the most amazing human beings on right now. This human being was the creator of crypto law, or the founder, which was launched in 2021 to be a clearinghouse of information, news, analysts, and key U.S. regulatory developments for digital asset holders just like us. Cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies are a revolutionary innovation for our global economy, but more importantly, the United States is the world's cradle of innovation. And the action taken by U.S. Congress, specifically our SEC coming up here in the future, is going to greatly impact every single one of us watching this video. And I'm so honored today to have John Deaton on our channel. You are a legend in our communities, which I'm really, really excited. So first, our community would like to get to know you and understand, who is John Deaton?
Well, thanks, Coach. I appreciate you having me. I'm a big fan, brother. Really appreciate what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, listen, I'm a lawyer, but that's not how I identify myself. I identify myself first and foremost as a father. I have 3 daughters. Prior to starting my own law firm, I worked as a lawyer in the Marine Corps for about 7.5 years, being a lawyer on active duty. After that, I started working, helping asbestos victims, people that are diagnosed with mesothelioma and toxic type of torts. Did that for about 4 years, realized that I was just making, someone else wealthier. And I was just a worker at the end of the day, and launched my own law firm in 2006. And since then, I've been self-employed. And, that's about it. I came to the XRP community completely sort of organically and by accident. Once I realized what the SEC was attempting to do, got involved, and now I'm talking to you.
Yeah, that's wild. So I remember, I'll never forget. It's one of those moments you'll never forget, right? So I remember when C word was happening, all that stuff. I was locked down. We have a in-person facility. I was locked down in quarantine. It was December 2020. I was locked down in a hotel because I couldn't come to my facility. And I remember all of a sudden my text messages start blowing up. My messages, JV, the SEC, Jay Clayton just launched a lawsuit against the SEC. And I came up with this saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to sell? I said, I'm holding on like a tick on a dog. For some reason, something to me did not feel right. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel right that they were launching this case against the SEC based on my own personal research. So the question I have for you is, how did you get involved in this? Like, how did you get involved in the XRP, doing the class action lawsuit? And how did it come to you? And how did you move forward with this?
Well, I bought XRP in 2016. I bought it along with Bitcoin. I bought some Ethereum. I looked into XRP. Bought XRP, became a fan of XRP and what it was trying to accomplish, and the utility that I saw that it was achieving. And then literally, I wasn't big on Twitter, to be honest with you, Coach. I wasn't that involved with it. I check it for news. I saw a bunch of people going back and forth. At Garlinghouse had tweeted that they were going to be sued. Yeah. And then a few days later, basically what you're talking about, the traffic on Twitter was crazy. Yeah. I pulled up the complaint, and I was expecting to just think, I thought the SEC was going to do what they normally do. It goes to your point about something felt wrong. And I said, okay, maybe they're going after Ripple for selling XRP in 2013 or 14 with the ecosystem is, not what it is today. And that they were going to claim that on these specific days to this specific investor, it constituted a security, and that was it. It was going to be limited. And I thought it's not going to be that big of a deal. It'll be more noise than anything. But then, brother, when I pulled the complaint up on my phone, I read the first paragraph, and the first paragraph tells you everything you needed to know. It said that XRP is a digital asset security. They labeled the token itself a security, and that it was being used from 2013 to present. What that means is today's XRP is a security. And I remember it was on Christmas Eve. I printed the complaint, and I left it there. And about 8, 9 o'clock at night, I started reading it. My girlfriend, she was wrapping presents. We have a child. She lives with me, and she was wrapping presents. I was supposed to participate. I'm reading this complaint, and I keep saying, I can't believe this. I read a paragraph. It said XRP itself, the very nature of XRP is a security. I'm like, what? That makes no sense. And then it said that, all XRP holders entered into a common enterprise with Ripple and every other XRP holder. And I started thinking, well, you could say that about Bitcoin. You could say that about Ethereum. You could say that about gold investors. Like, this makes no sense. And then I basically became obsessed, and I spent that night reading the complaint, taking notes, doing some research, and got upset because I knew what was going to happen. I knew that Coinbase, which was going public, they're never gonna go public with the SEC claiming that one of their tokens is an unregistered security. So I knew they were going to delist it. And I just got upset. And it's like what you said, people was like, what are you going to do about it? And so I just thought to myself, I'm just not going to take this sitting down. And I went to my girlfriend and I said, I think I'm going to sue the SEC.
Wow.
And spent the next 6 days writing a writ of mandamus, which basically is just asking them to limit the case to what the law says. Like they were just going overboard. And to be honest with you, Coach, I thought there was a chance that maybe the SEC lawyers wrote the complaint by mistake, overly broad, because it makes no sense. It just doesn't. And then once I got into it and I saw that it was on Clayton's last day, and there was all this nefarious, suspicious, circumstances surrounding it, and the rest is history. I ended up tweeting it out. And then, brother, from that day until today, there are 67,276 XRP holders who have joined together from the United States and over 60 other countries around the world. It's incredible.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, God, that's so powerful. I love that we were talking about the community, right? The community is like no other. I mean, and I think what it did during the C word is it provided purpose for people, right? And so I want to take the gloves off and just get right into this with Jay Clayton. Yeah. And so that's one thing that really struck me. I was like, this is really weird. And now I'm quarantined in a hotel. I'm all by myself, and I'm just diving into this. And all of a sudden, he leaves the SEC, right? And then I started studying, I'm going to get it. Is it One River or New River? He goes to consult for a cryptocurrency.
One River.
Which increased their position in Bitcoin and Ethereum, very, very recent, right before he threw the case out. And then I just started to dive in, right? Looking at Bill Hinman, right? Where did Bill Hinman go? He went to Andreessen Horowitz, if I'm saying that correctly, the $2.2 billion cryptocurrency fund. Then I see Gary Gensler come from MIT, taking over the SEC. And so I know all of us are wondering this question, like, what is going on? I mean, it's I think we can clearly see it. And why is it dragging out for this long? We're coming up on 2 years coming up this December, which is wild. And as I dove into the SEC cases against nefarious companies that are doing stuff wrong, I mean, it seemed like there was, and maybe I'm speaking out of school, but the litigation didn't take this long. So what in your opinion is going on right now?
Well, listen, I've said it 6 days after, actually 9 days after the SEC dropped the lawsuit. I actually wrote in a federal pleading in that writ of mandamus, I said that this lawsuit appears to be a weapon. Now whether that was a weapon designed directly against Ripple for these other people's benefit, or whether it was used as a weapon to go after crypto in general. Back then, I didn't know. I didn't know at that time, Coach, that Bill Hinman collected $15 million from Simpson Thacher while at the SEC, and Simpson Thacher was a member of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. I didn't know that, I didn't put it together like you did it back then. One River makes a $1 billion bet on Bitcoin and Ether 2 months before the lawsuit is dropped. I didn't know that, at the time that Consensus, which is obviously backing Ethereum, that they were purchasing Quorum and the JP Morgan coin from JP Morgan, which is a competitor of Ripple, and that Sullivan and Cromwell represents Consensus and Joe Lubin, and Sullivan Cromwell is Clayton's firm. You just start connecting the dots, and you're like, wow, this got dropped in a way, just the circumstances alone. I tell everyone, don't believe me, don't believe Coach, right? How about Joseph Grunfest, right? Joseph Grunfest, who helped the Ethereum investors, who helped them act as liaison with the SEC. He wrote the letter before Clayton dropped the lawsuit saying, listen, if you do this, there's no reason to do this. You've allowed this to be traded for 7.5 years. You're not claiming fraud, so there's no investors being, defrauded. You have a new administration coming in. You haven't distinguished any difference between Ethereum and XRP. And also, he marked what you already brought up, Coach. He said, look, never in the history of the SEC has there been a mass exodus of leadership behind a lawsuit. And just so people know, that's Clayton, Bill Hinman, the director of enforcement, Mark Berger, who went to Simpson Thacher with Hinman afterwards, the director of trading and markets, and several other high, ranking officials that all pushed the lawsuit. They all left right after dropping a bomb. This case is the most significant non-fraud SEC enforcement case in modern history. That is not hyperbole. That's not hyperbole, because as we're probably going to talk about, the impact that this case could have on the overall crypto market, it makes it the most significant case in years.
Oh yeah, that's man. So we're gonna dive into next. I hope people understand the impact. Like, a lot of people are just getting into XRP and understanding what, like, for example, what is a security, right? As you invest in, right? For example, there's companies like Link2 where you can buy pre-IPO share. That's a share in a company. XRP is not a share in the company. I do not have a relationship with or a contract with them. And I just want people to understand, we have a lot of new XRP holders, that XRP, you don't own Ripple, right? But if you buy Amazon stock, you own part of Amazon. You're a shareholder of Amazon. And so that's it. It seems so simplistic. And as we go into this complexity, and some of the things that I wanted to get clarity from you, as I keep saying, this is to bring in a new Howey test. This is to regulate cryptocurrency. And also, I feel like they're teetering, just like you explained, all the stuff we've been researching is they're teetering on them being exposed big time. And if they do, it's going to change the whole infrastructure. Not only are we going through a whole conscious awakening with, we got Elon buying Twitter. That was wild. I mean, he buys Twitter. And so what I feel like is happening, the bullies are being backed in a corner. They're going to start throwing haymakers. And this is one of them. This is one of those haymakers where, like, guys, we got to lock in. If we regulate this digital asset, we can go out and go after all the other digital assets. So where do you see this case going, and what impact could it make on the crypto community?
Well, you just said it in your own words. You don't have to be a lawyer to figure this stuff out. You figured it out. And if you just said in your words, Coach, if we can be successful and go after this token, we can go after any token. Think of these facts for everybody watching. All right. You have a token that traded for 7.5 years. You have a token that in January of 2019 went to Coinbase, went to the SEC and said, we've run XRP through our very stringent framework, and today's XRP is nowhere near being a security. We're going to list it next month unless you tell us otherwise. SEC doesn't say anything, and they list it. And then you get to June of 2019, Ripple files a form with the SEC that says we're buying 9% of MoneyGram, and we're going to use XRP with MoneyGram in cross-border remittances. The SEC approved that. And so that went down. Wow. And when you think about all of that, if XRP is deemed a security, then every other altcoin is in the same category. Ethereum held an ICO. And I don't think today's Ethereum is a security. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but the fact that we can stake and loan and collateralize our crypto, to me, that takes it out of one of the Howey factors that says you have to rely on the efforts of others. You don't have to rely. So, but there's no doubt that Ethereum's ICO was a security. And so think about it. If you take this case and you take one of the top, at the time, the third largest crypto asset on the planet, and you can deem it, the token itself, as a security, then everything, XLM's a security, Algo's a security, Ether's a security, just go down the list. And it gives the SEC what Gary Gensler wants. He wants this land grab, right? He wants this nascent, innovative crypto market. He wants to regulate it as the SEC chairman. And a win in this case gives him that ability.
Yeah, and that's what's scary to me is that, you know, the SEC doubled their crypto enforcement when to me it should be the CFTC regulating cryptocurrency. In my opinion, I wanted to get your opinion on that because it's like it almost feels like it reminds me of the guy from The Simpsons, the guy that's in there trying to grab all the stuff, and it's like, what are you doing, man? You guys throw out this case, you continue it on, you're dragging it out forever, right? You're dragging the XRP holders through the mud, and now you want to double your crypto enforcement within the SEC. I feel like it should be regulated by the CFTC. What do you think's happening with this? Is it a power grab? Are they just trying to protect themselves?
No, I think you're 100% on, and it is. Listen, your viewers, and I know you know this, but all the viewers, you said there are a lot of people getting into XRP, you know, present day. Listen, the XRP, any commodity. All right, let's take Bitcoin for example. Bitcoin is a commodity. And it can, or property, whatever you want to call it, it can be used. It can be offered, packaged, and marketed as a security. Any asset can be utilized as a security if you market it a certain way, package it a certain way. So XRP could be utilized as a security in certain instances, and so could Ether and Bitcoin and gold contracts, all of that. Those are assets, commodities that should be regulated by the CFTC. The danger here is that the SEC is saying the token itself, XRP, is a security. And that is the functional equivalent, Coach, of saying the oranges that grew on the orange grove trees, that the individual oranges were securities back in 1946 when Howey was decided. Yeah. It's absurd. The Supreme Court has said case after case that what makes something an investment contract, aka a security with a particular company or promoter, is the way that company schemes and packages and markets it and leads investors to believe that they are investing in the management team of that company. And so here's what's amazing with XRP, and I know this because I'm in communication with 67,000 XRP holders. We assembled affidavits, and I've learned that the majority of first-time XRP purchasers never knew of a company called Ripple. They may have heard the term Ripple because it was used, you know, Ripple interchangeably with XRP at one point, but they didn't know of this company that sold software to banks when they first bought XRP. They bought XRP because it was a top market cap and it was cheap. They bought it because it was fast and it appeared in their account and wallet much faster than Bitcoin did, you know, and they were sold on the technology. And so that's what's so crazy about this case, that a lot of people aren't paying attention to, you know, which is they're attacking the underlying token. Yeah. If you go to Bill Hinman's speech, that's such the infamous June 14th, 2018 speech. In that speech, he says the token itself is never the security. Yet here we are today with the SEC arguing that.
Wild, man. So I've been telling a lot of people this is the greatest time in human history. And why I believe that is number one, I feel like I'm investing in one of the greatest digital assets in history and being part of the greatest community in history. And you brought something up. I feel like this is going to be written in history books. We are literally going to be written in history books of a change in a financial system. And so as we move into this new asset of crypto, a lot of people are panicking right now. I mean, people are, you know, the crypto market, it's a bloodbath. Let's be honest, right? So as we look at cryptocurrency, and what I get a lot of messages on Instagram, TikTok, all over the world, is people like, is cryptocurrency going to zero? And it's like, I just want to give people a little bit of peace of mind. And, you know, do you really, what is your thoughts on the cryptocurrency ecosystem? Now, I'll share what my opinion on it is. I believe I'm watching the XRP case very, very closely. I'm a long-term holder. I invest in cryptocurrencies like Warren Buffett style, real world solve, leadership team. I look at the marketing team. I look at the utility. So almost when I buy cryptocurrency, I'm almost buying it like a security. I'm buying into the company. And so I'm not buying a security. I don't want to make that clear. But when I buy it as if I'm buying the infrastructure of the company, and will it be here long term? And so as people are panicking right now with the markets collapsing, what I think is going to happen is regulation is going to be be changed through the XRP case, in my opinion. And that's going to go down to a lot of the cryptocurrencies that have no utility. And it's going to be really difficult for a lot of these cryptocurrencies to survive. Where do you see the say in December this thing gets dropped or settled, or it is deemed a security? Like, where do you see, well, let's say it doesn't get deemed a security. Where do you see the ecosystem of crypto going?
Well, I think that, some of the people that are in the traditional financial world, the Bill Millers and Kathy Woods, Raoul Paul, all these individuals, they seem to think that, we're at a 1 to 2 trillion market cap overall, and that it's going to double or triple. I think that in the end, there's going to be a survivor of a handful of these projects. There's no way that 10,000 projects, or whatever the number is today, is going to survive. But if people are doing what you're doing, and you're doing that type of research, that type of analysis, and you're looking at, not to quote Brad Garlinghouse, but I will, what problem is being solved?
Right.
Do you have a problem? Is it being solved? And is this token solving that problem? And so I'm a firm believer. I'm heavily invested in crypto. XRP is a significant investment of mine. I think that you've been teaching the right. This is the most important part, right? And if you train your mind the way I know that you try to teach people to train their mind, then you can look at today's bloodbath as an opportunity versus an obstacle, and that's the step, you know what I mean? And I think that as long as people follow that approach, they'll be successful. But you can't, a lot of people if you're getting into crypto to get rich overnight,
no,
it's never going to happen. I mean, can you get lucky if you bought, Shiba Inu or Dogecoin, at the very beginning and it ran up? Sure, it happens. But for most people, it's not going to happen. So you have to do it the approach that you're taking.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And it's good to give people peace of mind. And however, people, I always say, don't trust a word I say, trust the feeling and vibration it creates in your body and act accordingly, right? So if this vibes with you, then act accordingly. If it doesn't, then don't, right? And one thing that I think I want to get your opinion on this, going a little bit deeper into esoteric, like where there's a big transition happening in our world, right? Mentally, physically, the SEC is backed in a corner right now. You have guys like me and you out there that have these platforms now where we can share with millions of people what's going on or what our opinion is, and they can go do their own research. I feel like there's going to be a massive infrastructure. We're going from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. We're going from industrial to technical. And I really feel like you and I and this whole ecosystem of, 452 people, thousands of people who watch us in the future are part of a brand new asset class, number one, in a brand new financial system. How do you see the overall financial system playing out? I mean, I believe, based on my historical, I shouldn't say predictions, my historical research, I'm obsessed with Ray Dalio and studying all of his stuff. And we're in a really tough time right now, economically, with interest rates going up, right? We got interest rates, we got gas prices skyrocketing. The normal average everyday person, Jerome Powell said, they may get leveraged towards technology. They're worried about the middle class. So we're at this time right now where, it's going to be the setback of a century or the comeback of a lifetime for some people. So where do you see the overall financial system going and the world going?
Well, I think that you're right. I'm also someone who, follows Ray Dalio, and I think that we could be in for a couple rough years. You know what I mean? And I think people have to accept that. The last week has been rough in the market. Whether you're talking about whether you're Amazon stock or whether you're in crypto or Bitcoin or whatever. So I think that we are headed for, and I don't think it's happened yet, a real capitulation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if people stay the course, and I believe in crypto, this is going to be a revolutionary wealth distribution that transfers, but there's going to be a lot of people that are shaken out. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of FUD. I also think that part of what's going on in the crypto world is, I think that there's going to be more FUD. There's going to be more regulation. There's going to be more threats. I predicted, Coach, that by the end of the summer, I believe the SEC is going to file a suit against Coinbase or Kraken or one of the major exchanges or a multiple of them, claiming that these tokens are unregistered securities, even though they won't tell you which ones. right? They'll say, they'll just list them. And so I think that we're in for a shakeout, and you've got to have the resolve. And that's why I was alluding to that mental approach that you try to teach people, because it's going to require strength. I mean, listen, if you own Amazon stock or Apple, or you're into crypto, Bitcoin or XRP, it hasn't been a fun, like just looking at the bottom line, looking at a 60%, 50% reduction from a few weeks ago. It's not fun. And if you have the right mental attitude toward it, then you're going to be fine. But I think there's going to be a lot of people have to get shooken out first.
Yeah, it's fortunate or unfortunate. I'm really working to really help people just, get grounded back in the family, like get present, get out there and build that infrastructure. What I think is positive about this, and I think what the C word did, is it brought a lot of us back to family and really seeing what's important, right? Because some people lost their jobs, people were losing money, families were moving back in together. And I think that's one of the important things that people need to understand, is that it doesn't matter how wealthy you get in crypto, right? Because what you're going to only do is exacerbate who you already are. So it's about, this is the greatest time in human history to really dive into self-development, dive into investing, and understand how real investors make money, how they get wealthy, right? The longer you stay in the market, the wealthier you get. And I keep encouraging people, like, self-development is so important right now. A lot of people have a lot of time to do self-development. And then that goes into my other narrative I want to talk to you about, is how much things have changed since 1929, when we had the Great Depression. In the Great Depression, you're coming running down, hear ye, here's what's going on. Whoever flooded that. And all of a sudden they run the banks, right? But now we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have people flooding people in and out of cryptos. And it's such a confusing world, and all these narratives. The Johnny Depp trial, people are so obsessed with the Johnny Depp trial right now. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of narratives happening that are going to keep people's attention as they change this whole ecosystem, because they have to change, in my opinion, they have to change the ecosystem, right? They printed money into an oblivion. We're buried in debt. Our debt to income ratio is negative, right? We got war, Ukraine and a Russia narrative. We got the SWIFT system narrative, ISO 20022 coming up in November. There's so many things happening. Like, where do you see, like, so for example, I think that whatever America does is going to regulate the whole world in regards to cryptocurrency. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, listen, this is just a staggering statistic, and I know you're very well aware of it. Some people hear it and they don't believe it, but 40% of every US dollar has been printed in the last 2 years. I mean, people just need to think about that out loud. 40% of all the money ever produced and printed by the United States of America, 40% of it in the last 2 years. I mean, people don't understand. $1 trillion, right? The government throws $1 trillion out the way they used to throw $1 billion out, the way they used to throw $1 million out. 10 billion. They used to say $10 billion is going to cost, as though it was this astronomical number. Now they say 10 trillion. And $1 trillion, I'd encourage your viewers to look up what 1 trillion seconds equals. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're talking about year. I think it's like 300 years or something like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And so you can't keep doing that. You can't keep printing, and debasing your currency the way that not just the United States, but everyone is. Everyone's experiencing either inflation, severe inflation, or hyperinflation. And so there has to be a transition.
Yep.
I think that's what you're alluding to.
Yep.
And I agree with you. Yep. You can't be $300 trillion in debt in the world, right? No. And think that you can just keep doing that. And so
yeah, I think the hot potato keeps being passed down the road. And I go all the way back to or even when they the Bretton Woods standard, right? And then we went into the petrodollar, and now we're going into this zero carbon narrative by 2030 or 2050, right? And I'm trying to position people to help people. It's not exciting, right? I always tell people, if you go to a grocery aisle, right, and you see a Bible and a tabloid, what you're going to read, right? You're going to read the tabloid, right? It's just been trained as human beings. This stuff is not exciting, but I highly recommend people dive into the petrodollar and what's happening, how countries are working to detach from that. And though these are all things that I feel are distinctly happening based on the new quantum financial system they're bringing in, which everything's going to be operating on a blockchain. And I feel like it's our job as responsible investors to pick the winners and losers by understanding fundamentals, by researching the companies, like not just listening to a TikToker like me. I don't talk about specific cryptocurrencies because I don't want to FUD people in or FUD people out. Right. But if you hear someone talking about Shiba, well, go find out who the leadership team is, find out what they actually do and really dive into that, right? And seek to understand. And so as we go into this new quantum financial system and new regulation, like, where do you see, like, I wanted to ask you a question. So you went from, in 2020, you were doing your thing, and all of a sudden now you're a superstar in the XRQ. I mean, if you mention John Deaton, people are like, I love John Deaton. So how much has your life changed since this XRP case?
Well, I tell you, it's been amazing because there was one time I did something. I learned that Claire's, the company that does little children makeup, I learned that had asbestos in it, and I spent some of my own money and I investigated it, and I found out, and I put a notice out and it went on TV, and I was really I wasn't trying to get business because there's no business there. I was just trying to make change, but a lot of people attacked me. Oh, you're just an ambulance chaser, you're this or that. And so when I dropped the writ of mandamus, I was talking to my girlfriend. I was like, man, I bet people are gonna misinterpret this and they're gonna think the wrong stuff. And the opposite has happened. Yeah. The XRP community, they're smart. Yeah. They've embraced it. They joined in this common cause. I think that they trust that I'm authentic in what I'm trying to accomplish, and they've been so supportive. So it's been uplifting. I was kind of got to a point, Coach, in my career, if you do something, the same thing, even if you love your clients and care about them, if you do the same thing for 20 years, you can get in a rut, maybe. And I started getting down on the law. Everything's about money and the defense attorneys and the cases. Yep. And, it's like that rat race. And this has been uplifting for me. And when you get stories or I get emails where they're like, they share some of their life experience with me and how appreciative they are, it's really uplifted me. It has caused a little bit of pressure, right? You don't want to disappoint. I certainly don't want to disappoint 67,000 people, right? Yeah. But it's been probably one of the most uplifting things that have ever happened to me, to be honest with you.
I think it's pretty legendary what you're doing, because I mean, you got 67,000 people and many people outside of that, right, that aren't even in the actual in the what do you call it, a class action lawsuit. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people outside there. I don't know how many, but what it's doing is you're providing purpose for people, or people have something to focus on other than all this bullshit going on in the world and all this craziness going on in the world. And what I'm seeing is with the XRP community, it's almost like we were both in the military, and thank you for your service. I was in the Coast Guard, and in the military, you build these brotherhoods and these sisterhoods that are unbreakable. And every person I meet I'm getting chills. It's all like confirmation. But every time I meet someone from the XRP community, it's like a brother or sister. It's a wild thing that it's attracting these like-minded, uplifting people. And one thing that I noticed is it doesn't seem like in the XRP community, we're not bashing other cryptocurrencies. We're not out there, I know my community, I don't ever hear that bashing Bitcoin. And it's a lot of fundamental investors that are really working out on the opposite end. There's a lot of tribalism with that. But what do you think about the whole tribalism thing with cryptocurrency? I want to get your opinion on that. When people go into that whole thing, have you experienced that with XRP, or people coming at you because you're the XRP legend?
No, I think you're on point, man. Are there people that are XRP maxis? Of course.
Sure.
And they believe in the technology, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't see them bashing like the Bitcoin maxis do.
Right.
And so I'm someone who has been saying, listen, digital tokens are software code, whether it's ETH or XRP or Bitcoin. And we got to end the tribalism, because part of the SEC's approach to this, and I believe this 100%, they picked Ripple because they know that Ripple is disliked by many in the communities.
Wow.
And so what do? They engage in divide and conquer. So if you look at the complaint, Coach, it's not a fraud complaint. But the way they wrote it, it was in fraud-like language. And when the case first got dropped in the media, people were saying the SEC is suing Ripple for fraud. There's not one allegation of fraud in that complaint.
Wow.
Yet that was the way they created, a division. And then, of course, Ripple and XRP, Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson, they made the comment because they're attacked. They made the comment that, hey, you're favoring Chinese technologies. And then that gets Vitalik, calling XRP a S-coin and all of this. And so the tribalism is feeding into the SEC and the government's hands.
Yeah.
And we've got to end that. I tell everyone, you don't have to root for Ripple, but you should not be rooting for the SEC. You should want the SEC to fail, because what they're attempting is something that is extraordinarily dangerous to this entire crypto, community, this crypto industry. And so tribalism to me is the biggest threat to crypto.
Wow, I've never thought of it in that view, because I'm really big on that left, right? I'm just like, I'm neutral. I'm moving forward, my family, my warriors. I'm making my own decisions. I have a conscious decision to be great, to be not great every single day. But I never thought about that view. I want to recap that, is that they were able to take a cryptocurrency that they knew if they went after it, it would cause massive division within crypto, which is wild. I mean, they really think this stuff out. It's like, holy cow. Wow. That never even crossed my mind that they would pick a cryptocurrency that clearly is not a security, that would allow the Bitcoin maxis and the Ethereum maxis to go, I told you they're and then it's like this pointing fingers, and it's like, getting the snakes to go against each other. And it's like, what the heck? I never thought of that, because that's happening in the world. I mean, it's the mask versus unmasked. I don't care if you wear a mask. You want to wear a mask, wear a mask. Like, it's just this constant divide and conquer thing. And it's like, wow. And that's been happening for centuries, right? If you can get the people to turn against each other, they aren't looking at the actual narrative. That's deep. That's really
and if you think about it, like I said, because Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse, they're fighting for the survival of their business. They make the comment like, hey, the hash rate in China, you're calling us centralized. The Chinese Communist Party could roll back Bitcoin because 65% of the hash rate is in China. And then, of course, that creates more division, and it just feeds on itself. And this tribalism feeds itself. It's like you said, mask, unmasked, vax, unvaccinated, Trump supporter versus non-Trump supporter. Pick whatever the topic is. And we got to stop living in these tribals. I don't care who you voted for, Coach. I don't care what you do in your private life. You and I have way more in common. Than people realize. Even if we vote differently, I'm pretty sure, you want to do well for your family. You love your family just like I do mine. And I think we got to get past that. We got to get to that place where we realize that, we're in this together.
Yes, man. We got to dive into that, man. We're brothers. I've been looking at this. Has been happening for centuries, and I wanted to hear your opinion first before I jumped into that. But it was like, this has been happening for centuries, where they get the left and right made the left and right. Like, it's like the left and right made the left and right to get us to pick sides to go against each other. It's like, if you're Catholic, good. If you're Church of Latter-day Saints, good. As long as you're connected with your higher self or being a good human being, that's all that really matters. And I hope that people can really hear that message. And I love that you're expressing that message. It's like Coast Guard would make fun of the Marines, and Marines would make fun of the Coast Guard. And I mean, that's the fun things back and forth. But it's like, man, if people could understand that the time we are in human history right now is what's being exposed is exactly what you're talking about. Is the fact that a small group of people have been able to manipulate a very large mass of people. But it's one perception shift. If people could start to wake up to this reality, which 67,000 people, which is a big pebble in the pond. It really is. And when this case, that's what I'm so excited about. And I see it so much bigger as you're speaking. It's like, when the XRP case, I believe it's going to go in the favor of Ripple. And when it does, I believe it's going to be a human consciousness shift, because it's going to be FOMO. Everybody's going to come rushing in. They're going to be involved in this great digital asset. I don't know. It's just such an interesting time. I'm just honored to actually have this video in human history, because people are going to look back on this and go, wow. And I'm just so glad that we brought that up, because these are things that are important to talk about. Because if XRP people could, Bitcoin and everybody, because the Bitcoin people don't realize if XRP gets deemed a security, they're screwed. Ethereum's screwed. Everybody's screwed.
Yeah.
Like, they should all be focused on this case. Every single person should be joining this class action lawsuit, in my opinion. How do
they should? I mean, listen, it's the government, and I'm sure that you're aware of this Luna and UST thing, and the Bitcoin. Janet Yellen is already using that as saying that we have to create a central bank digital currency that's going to basically tell us what to do, where to go, what we can spend our money on, control our thoughts, our actions. I mean, that's a heavier subject, but that's where we're headed, what I mean? And so, what were you going to say, though? I interrupted you.
No, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. We're vibing. We hadn't really got to go this deep with it. I agree 100%. I mean, I'm diving into these BlackRock, and I just did a Blackstone. I didn't even realize they used to be connected back into Larry Fink and the CEO, and they bought Ancestry.com. What do you do with Ancestry.com? You give them your DNA. And so it's like, what the heck? I mean, my brain is like, and I'm not into this nefarious, this evil force out there. What I'm into is the fact that, I'm not saying I'm a fan of anybody. What I'm saying is Elon's like, screw you guys, SEC. I'm going to buy Twitter. Now, to me, that's freedom. And what I see is there's an opportunity right now for a normal, everyday, long-haired hippie dude like me to get in the game. And that's what I see with cryptocurrency and the XRP. And I'm not telling people to go buy XRP. What I'm saying is, we will never have an opportunity. My children will never have an opportunity like this in human history to get involved in an even playing field where it's all starting over in like a new ecosystem. And that's what excites me about this. And that's what excites me about the XRP community, and I hope people can see this video and provide peace for themselves, because it's not pretty right now in crypto. People that came in a couple months ago, they're like, my portfolio's down 50%. Take a deep breath. You still have your coins, as long as you're, be careful who you're following in the space. That's one thing I would say. Be very, very careful. If anybody's trying to get rich quick or teaching you that, this is going to be the life-changing wealth in a couple months, I would recommend just finding a different wise counsel. That's what I always say. So I know I've taken up 45 minutes of your time, but I wanted to ask you a very, very powerful question. So as you get to the end for John Deaton in your life, what do you want to be known for?
A good father.
Wow.
First and foremost, a good father. I'd like, when you think about that, and I've experienced a few health issues in my life, and we're really on this planet for a very short period of time. And I can't believe that, I'm in my 50s. I remember thinking 50 was like, oh my God, that's near death. You know what I mean? And now here I am. And so, I'd just like to be thought of someone who didn't just say, what's in it for me? You know what I mean? I probably, if I could get one thing other than being a great father, it would be somebody that didn't just think, hey, what can I get for me? And what can I do to help a few other people? And I know that sounds corny, but
no, not at all.
But it's because at the end of the day, money's not, you're not going to take it with you.
No.
That's for sure. When our number gets called, and it's certainly important because it can provide you, security and financial freedom. That's what money is for me. But at the end of the day, when you leave this earth, what is your contribution?
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. How did you contribute? In what positive way? Because there's a lot of negativity, man, in this world, and it's swarming right now. And all this, what we're talking about, the tribalism, we're just need to talk to each other. Like I said, you and I've never had the pleasure to meet except for here, but I'd love to sit down and get to know you as a human being, because I guarantee you'll be like, wow, that's fascinating. That's interesting. What about this? And then we realize, even if we vote differently, and we may not, even if we do, right? Sure. It doesn't matter. A vegetarian and a carnivore can sit there and be like, wow, that's great. And we think the same way. We want the same things in life. You know what I mean? And we have a lot more in common than we ever thought we did.
That's powerful. I'll tell you what, your kids are going to be very, very proud, man, because I'm telling you, you're going to be written in history books. Legendary stuff, what you're doing. And I want to bring up a powerful point that you said about the vegan thing. When I went and met with my shaman in Peru, he asked me when I came back, he said, hey, JV, he said, you still a vegan? And I was like, no, I ate meat last week. He goes, oh, interesting. He was like, I thought you were a vegan. I remember you talking on your social media. You shouldn't eat meat. You shouldn't do all this stuff. And he's like, well, how many people were you making feel bad about eating meat? And he's like, so, but you eat meat now. That's weird. He goes, what are you, a carnivore now? And I'm like, no, I just eat meat. I go, I'm a flexitarian. He goes, oh, now you're a flexitarian. He goes, so you're a vegan, you're a flexitarian. He goes, when are you going to start identifying with anything that makes other people feel uncomfortable? And I was like, wow. He's like, dude, you're just a person who eats food and feels a certain way at a certain time. There's no reason to make people feel bad about, the fact that they eat meat or they're Catholic or Jehovah's Witness or whatever it is. He goes, just be you, man. Right. Just be you. And I'm really honored to meet you, man. Right when you came on early, I was like, man, this dude's a cool dude. And I'm really excited. And I know we asked you, and I'll put you on the spot. I would love to have you at our next conference. It would be such an honor, man. I know
absolutely, man. I love the vibe. Listen, we need more positivity in this world, brother. We need people to strengthen this. Yes. You know what I mean? Because I don't care. You could be the greatest bodybuilder in the world. If you have a weak mind, you're not going to maximize yourself or your potential. Yes. And life is going to deal us adversity. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you got in the bank. Life will find a way to humble you and to create adversity or obstacles. Yes. And if you have the right, mindset and attitude, then you can overcome those things. You know what I mean?
Love it, man. I love it. That's a great way to end it. So we talked about the SEC. We talked about regulation. We talked about tribalism. We talked about love and frequency, man. It's so honored to meet you. And I hope that we can do this again as things progress with the SEC case. But I just want to say we love you, man. Welcome to our family. And we're honored to have you present to our family here. So as we always say in the Warrior Academy, Warriors, rise, get your shit together. Let's go.
Love you back.